This year marks the 40th anniversary of the worst industrial accident in human history. On the night of December 2nd, 1984, the quiet city of Bhopal in central India would forever be scarred by a toxic gas leak that claimed thousands of lives and changed the fate of an entire community. This is a tale of negligence, corporate greed, and the long-lasting impact on innocent lives. The Bhopal disaster. Bhopal is the capital city of the Indian state of Madhya Pradesh, located in the heart of the country, and is known as the City of Lakes with its beautiful waters and serene surroundings. The city is currently the home to 1.7 million residents. But Bhopal was also home to a chemical plant owned by Union Carbide India Limited, a subsidiary of the American company Union Carbide Corporation. The facility was surrounded by residential areas, with thousands of people living in squalid conditions. The plant manufactured the pesticide carbaryl, sold under the brand name Sevin. There are a number of ways to produce the chemical, but one process used methyl isocyanate, or MIC, as an intermediary as part of the process. MIC is highly toxic and when exposed to water reacts violently, releasing poisonous gases. After the Bhopal plant was built, other manufacturers produced carbaryl without MIC, though at a greater manufacturing cost. The plant was intended to boost India's agricultural productivity, but from the start, safety protocols were overlooked. In an effort to cut costs, Union Carbide began reducing its workforce, safety inspections and maintenance. Before 1984, there had been numerous incidents at the plant, including releases of MIC and other hazardous materials. These included the death of a worker in 1981, following a phosgene gas release, and the release of MIC in February 1982, which affected 18 workers. Investigations by the local newspaper Rapat declared, "Wake up, people of Bhopal, you are on the edge of a volcano." And on the night of December 2nd, 1984, that volcano exploded. The Union Carbide facility used 3 underground liquid MIC storage tanks with a capacity of 68,000 litres or 18,000 US gallons. Safety regulations specified that no one tank should be filled more than 50%, or about 30 tonnes. Each tank was pressurised with nitrogen, which allowed the MIC to be pumped out of the storage tanks. But in October 1984, tank E610 lost its ability to contain nitrogen, meaning MIC could not be pumped out, and the tank was filled greater than 50%, holding 42 tonnes of the chemical. Furthermore, by early December 1984, most of the MIC plant safety systems were malfunctioning, and many valves and lines were in poor condition. At around 11 PM on 2nd December, water somehow entered tank E610, which started a runaway exothermic reaction. This was exacerbated by contaminants, high ambient temperatures, and various other factors such as the presence of iron from corroding pipework. At 11 PM, the pressure inside the tank was 10 pounds a square inch, higher than the usual 2 psi. Workers originally assumed that the higher reading was an instrumentation failure, but by 11:30, workers in the vicinity of the MIC area were starting to feel the effects of exposure, so started to look for a leak. The pressure in the tank increased steadily over the next hour and a half. By 12:40 AM in the early hours of the following morning, the 3rd of December, the pressure had critically reached 40 psi and pressure relief activated. One employee witnessed a concrete slab above tank E610 crack as the emergency relief valve burst open, but pressure in the tank continued to increase to 55 psi, despite the fact that atmospheric venting of toxic MIC gas had already begun. Direct atmospheric venting should have been prevented, or at least partially mitigated by at least 3 safety devices which were malfunctioning or inoperable. a refrigeration system meant to cool the MIC tanks had been shut down in January 1982. The system was therefore running at higher than design temperatures, and its high temperature alarm, set to sound at around 11 degrees centigrade, had long since been disconnected. A flare tower was also provided that could have been used to burn the MIC gas before released to atmosphere, but had been disconnected for maintenance on a connecting pipe. A vent gas scrubber could also have been used to clean the release, but had been deactivated at the time and was in standby mode. Without these safety systems in place and operational, 40 tons of toxic MIC gas were released over the next 2 hours into the atmosphere. The deadly cloud started to drift over the plant's boundaries into the adjacent neighbourhoods, whose occupants were completely unaware of the lethal mist coming their way. The plant alarm system was not triggered until 12:50 am in the early hours of the 3rd of December. Activation of the system triggered 2 siren alarms, one that sounded inside the UCIL plant itself, and a second directed to the exterior, which would alert the general public and the city of Bhopal. The 2 siren systems had been decoupled from one another in 1982, so it was possible to leave the factory warning sign on whilst the public one remained inactive. And this is what occurred during the accident. The public siren briefly sounded, but was quickly turned off according to company procedures, meant to avoid alarming the public around the factory over inconsequential leaks. Workers meanwhile evacuated the plant, travelling upwind, but left nearby residents blissfully unaware that they should be doing likewise. The MIC gas leak emanating from tank E610 petered out at approximately 2 am. Finally, 15 minutes later at 2:15 am, the plant's public siren was sounded. But it was too late. The damage had already been done. The toxic gas cloud spread quickly across nearby slums and residential areas, with over 500,000 people in its path. Most were asleep, but woke to a burning sensation in their eyes and struggling to breathe. The poisonous cloud claimed immediate victims. The death toll in the first 72 hours was staggering, with the official number of deaths given as 3,928 fatalities. However, other estimates suggest the figure was much greater, closer to 8,000 people. A further 550,000 people suffered injuries of varying degrees. Emergency services were completely overwhelmed. The hospital had no idea what was causing the injuries, and when they were eventually informed it was MIC, they had no idea what the chemical was or how to treat its effects. But the exposure to the chemical had longer-term health effects, and a further 25,000 people are estimated to have died as a result of lifelong illnesses, including respiratory problems to cancer. As the shock subsided, anger took its place. How was this allowed to happen? Following the disaster, Union Carbide claimed it was a one-time accident, but internal documents later revealed they'd been cutting costs at the expense of safety. UCC and its executives knew the dangers of MIC. An internal company report on a sister plant located in the United States, at Institute, West Virginia, warned that a runaway reaction could occur in the MIC unit storage tanks, and that the planned response would not be timely or effective enough to prevent catastrophic failure of the tanks. This report was never forwarded to the Bhopal plant, even though the main design was the same. It was also claimed by leading safety experts that the storage of MIC was completely unnecessary. The MIC could and should have been produced online as needed, eliminating the need to store large quantities of highly hazardous material, which would have increased inherent safety. It was never fully understood how water entered tank E610. Water was regularly used to clean and flush lines in the plant, but a blind was usually placed in the pipework to ensure that water could not enter the tank. UCC claimed that the blind was in place, meaning it was impossible for water to get into the tank during flushing operations, and they instead suggested an alternative theory of deliberate sabotage by a disgruntled employee. The truth will never be found, but what is true is that ingress of water into that tank, coupled with the other safety management system failings present on the site, ultimately led to the deaths of thousands of people. After the leak, Union Carbide CEO Warren Anderson flew into India and visited Bhopal. He was swiftly arrested on 7th December 1984 and placed on bail, but 6 hours later he was flown out of the country on a government plane, never to return. The grubby legal proceedings that followed the accident stretched over the next 5 years. No Union Carbide executives ever faced court proceedings, with the US blocking attempts at extradition of UCC executives to India. Anderson himself was charged with manslaughter and was declared a fugitive from justice by the Chief Judicial Magistrate of Bhopal. Union Carbide did accept responsibility for the accident and offered compensation of $350 million in March 1986. But the Indian government considered this to be wholly unacceptable and instead wanted a settlement figure of $3.3 billion. However, after years of wrangling, a final out-of-court settlement of $470 million was agreed in February 1989. Attempts by campaigners to increase this inadequate settlement figure have been attempted. The Indian Supreme Court upheld the figure, and attempts to take the issue through US courts were also thwarted. The US Supreme Court ruled that Union Carbide India Limited was a separate entity owned, managed and operated exclusively by Indian citizens in India. The legacy of the Bhopal disaster is one of pain and perseverance. Decades later, the effects of the toxic gas are still evident. Children are born with birth defects, and generations of families continue to struggle with chronic health conditions. The area surrounding the plant remains contaminated with hazardous chemicals, and proper cleanup has never been completed. For survivors, justice has been elusive. Activists continue to demand accountability from Dow Chemical, the company that acquired Union Carbide in 2001, but the legal battles have dragged on for years with no resolution. The story of Bhopal is a sobering reminder of the devastating consequences of corporate negligence and the responsibility companies have towards the communities they operate in. Today, Bhopal stands as a symbol of corporate malfeasance, environmental injustice and the human cost of industrial disasters. But it's also a story of resilience. The survivors and their families continue to fight for justice, ensuring that the world never forgets what's happened. Their determination keeps the memory of the disaster alive and serves as a powerful lesson for industries worldwide. Safety, accountability and respect for human life should always come before profit. If you have found this video interesting, please like and subscribe to my channel for similar content. And feel free to leave a comment below. What do you think about the lack of accountability? Thank you for watching and stay safe.